All right, this is episode 5 of In the Rough with Angie. Today I am interviewing one of my best friends. She's a sister to me, actually. So we've known each other, I say about 15 years. Venetia thinks it's a little bit longer. We don't know. We didn't write down the exact date, but we met through church. Venetia came to a Bible study I was having at the time by Henry Cloud, Boundaries. So we got to know each other pretty quick because Venetia is the type of person that is non-judgmental. She's easy to get to know. She's hilarious. I had been going through kind of a lot of battling in my faith and just feeling really discouraged for probably a number of years. And when I met you, Venetia, you just opened the door back up for laughter and fun and not taking things too seriously. But then we could also have really deep conversations about faith and where we were at and things we were struggling with, and we would pray together, and it was just a great time. And we're still there, but we don't see each other obviously as much. We're both married now, lives going on. Okay, so Venetia, I'm gonna start with a silly question to establish that you're human. So when you and Brad go to a Mexican restaurant, Brad is your husband, and you're sharing salsa or queso, do you dip your chip in one time and finish the whole chip? Do you dip it in, take a bite, and then re-dip the chip?
That's a very personal question, Angie.
I know.
Do I double dip or not?
Yeah. Are you a double dipper? I just need to know.
It comes and goes. It depends.
Okay.
If I feel like I'm actually coming down with something, I will not double dip.
That's good. And then, since he's your husband, do you view it as it's not a big deal, but then if it was like somebody else, like a work colleague or somebody that you didn't know very well, then you wouldn't double dip ever, or you still might?
Yeah. We're both that way. We tend to be a little bit germaphobes, to the point if we go out to eat, we have these really nice plastic fork, knives, and spoons.
Oh, wow, that's good.
But they're silver, so it looks like it's, we're using what they have at the table.
So do you secretly pull it out of your purse and...
Exactly. The hand sanitizer, every time we grab something, we gotta sanitize our hands.
That makes sense, and that's smart to do. So the next question, what is your occupation?
I just switched from being a full-time nanny to getting into the family assistant, private assistant sector.
So what brought about the switch?
A few different things. I first started out in childcare in my late teens, early teens. It actually happened by default. It's just one of those things to where time went by. I ended up getting educated with it and then just found myself in that industry, which I ended up liking. A lot of people said I was good at it, I was natural, and but it wasn't ever anything that I truly my dreams or goals or anything like that, because I really didn't have anything particular. I was really at that age just really kind of confused, but at a point to where I needed to work and I needed to do something. And so fast forward now, I've been primarily working with babies and toddlers, and it's like imagine having a 2-year-old stays a 2-year-old for 20 years. You're always going through the terrible twos and all that stuff. And so it was really hard for me at first to acknowledge it, but I started having signs of burnout. I wasn't doing my best. I was feeling really guilty about it, and then I decided, I need to figure something out. This is not going in a good direction. And I care about the kids because you bond with them, and I didn't want to end up in a bad situation, because I like staying connected with families, and those are their babies. So when you just, even if it's an innocent mess up, it's their baby, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just thought, well, I need to go ahead and start transitioning, finding something else to do. And I still wanted to stay in the private sector. I'm not one who is good with offices and corporations. I like to help people. I like to be of service to people in various ways. I also like creativity and not being micromanaged, which sometimes you can find parents that are comfortable enough to fully trust you and to give you the space to make judgment calls, but other times and I get it, they're really just nervous and scared, and they maybe have issues with control or something. And I found that whenever I was with parents that were micromanaging, I instantly was turning them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when you become a personal assistant, family assistant, the focus shifts to where it's not so much on the kids, but it's on assisting the household to run smoothly with various responsibilities. And so I thought that's a good place to go to and to grow from there and see what that leads, where that would.
That's exciting, and you probably already started to develop that job as you were nannying, because even though it wasn't in your job description, you were probably already assisting them with other areas of the home, even though, they didn't ask for it. So it probably kind of naturally you started doing that. So do you feel like, yes, is that how it evolved?
Yeah. I mean, because with families, birthdays come around, so then you get into like planning birthdays or the holidays, and I really like that kind of stuff. Or organizing. I love to organize, to try and create systems. I like to do. Not every family wants you to do that, either for various reasons. They either have a system that they like, or maybe they're just not, they just don't have that mindset of having a system. Maybe it's more of a controlled chaos. That's where their comfort is. So.
And then, so when you start your new job, are you going to put together the plan for how everything's going to go during the day, or are you going to get there and they're going to say, hey, this is how our lives are run, how can you help us?
So when I get there, I mean, I already have an idea of what they're wanting, but I will basically take notes and ask them very detailed questions to help them organize each room, the kids' rooms, the older kids, help them come up with a system for, school and extra activities and just other various things.
Okay. What would you say is most important to you in life?
My faith, for sure, is number one. My family and my friends are very important to me. And then, of course, my fur babies.
Yeah. Who are your fur babies?
Cooper, who was adopted, and Cash, who is spoiled. That's cute. I mean, they're both spoiled, but in different ways.
So Cooper was adopted. Did you go to the shelter for Cooper, or was it a different process?
Found him online.
Okay.
And he's so cute. He was actually, I don't know, some person found him. He was probably just weeks old in a street in Dallas. They picked him up, took him to the shelter, and then from the shelter, a lady had picked him up to foster him, and then put his information and a picture of him online. And I think it was like Pet Find or something like that. I don't remember the website I was on, but it was something similar to that. Anyways, I saw his picture, fell in love, and normally I will ask my husband, hey, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. But I was like, look, I'm getting him. He fell in love, and he was like, yeah, he's pretty cute.
So that was Cooper, and then Cash, I forget how you got him. Did you go straight to a breeder?
He was from a breeder because he's a Bichon. And so
Okay.
when my first dog died, he was a Bichon. I had him for 18 years. I knew I wanted to always have a Bichon. I love the breed for many different reasons, but I always wanted to adopt as well.
Yeah.
Uh, so I first adopted Cooper, and then we had to save up for cash.
Okay. He was a lot of cash.
It was a lot of cash. And then once we had the money saved up for him, it was actually perfect timing because he was born. Like it just all lined up. And
Oh, wow.
boy, he was the only boy, and so when he was ready to go, we picked him up, and he's been the baby ever since, and he acts like it too. He pesters
No.
or acts like he doesn't like it, but we think he secretly does.
Probably. What breed is Cooper?
He's a mixture, and he's sitting underneath me, and I keep accidentally kicking him. He's a mixture of a Chihuahua and a Border Terrier.
So, was it a transition, more of a transition bringing Cooper in than Cash since he's mixed and you didn't know exactly what you're getting with the breed, or was it
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the same?
Yeah, because there was a lot about his breed and also his personality. That was a challenge. You know, he had a lot of anxiety. We would leave to go to work. He had so much anxiety that, I mean, someone almost had to just stay home with him. We couldn't.
Yeah.
It was to that point. And so, you know, I just went to the vet, and she ended up having to prescribe basically anxiety pills for him.
Hey, I was just hoping to do that for my dog, one of my dogs.
Yeah, and so it helps. I mean, you know, Brett, I don't either, but Brett especially does it. Like to give it to him because his eyes get glossy. I mean, he really mellows out.
Yeah.
Just looks drunk. You
So
know,
is it like Prozac or is it like Xanax?
it's like the dog version of that, pretty much.
I was just Googling Prozac for Huskies yesterday because we're thinking about getting our husky on Prozac because she destroys the backyard, digs holes, chews on everything. And I know that's like part of her breed to have that energy, but also it's like you can't let the dog's energy overtake your house. So
Yeah.
I just started researching dog Prozac. And so that's cool that you have tried something to help with your dog's anxiety. Do you have to give it to him every day or is it just as
No,
needed?
no, we don't give it to him every day now because he's calmed down a lot. Once, you know, he still has anxiety. It's not quite as bad. Um, him getting older and then us getting Cash really helped because we noticed the second Cash was here with him and we would leave, his anxiety was assuaged a little bit.
Oh, that's
Uh,
good.
and so now we don't really give him anything when we leave. We just have Cash. Their crates are close to each other so they can see each other, you know. The only time we really give him the anxiety pill is when we go on long trips and we're going to drive for a while because that
Yeah.
really heightens any anxiety he has. So it helps with that, and that's usually what we reserve it for.
Does it turn into a family prescription?
Sometimes there's times where Brad was like leaning one of Cooper's pills. Maybe.
That's what would be the temptation. Like, okay, having trouble tonight. Okay, so we're going to kind of jump into why I created the podcast, which is to just encourage people that we're all going through something. And then one way to be encouraged as you're going through the challenge is knowing that you have overcome other challenges in life, and then to hear how other people have overcome their personal challenges, to know that we're not alone. So it's really about like overcoming, and then how did you overcome? Was it an act of God? Was it a miracle? Was it your own hard work? Did somebody come in and help you? So that's what we're going to dive into to start is just an area of your life that you have overcome. So, and then how you overcame that. So, what is something in your life that you think back on that you know that you've gotten through it and you've overcame it?
There really is a lot I could choose to talk about, but I think the two biggest would be dyslexia and the issue with not being able to have kids of my own. Those two have been a pretty big mountain to climb.
Yeah. And so with wait, I'm not saying it right. Dyslexia? Yeah. How did you discover that you had it?
You know, being in school, I remember the teacher would have us, the whole class, take turns reading a book out loud. And I really basically knew early on when they were teaching just the alphabets and the sounds, and my brain and my tongue and the connection, I was just having trouble hearing exactly how the teacher would say a word. Then I would end up learning how to say words wrong, and I still struggle with that to this day. Or reading words and knowing how to correctly pronounce them. But then also whenever I would see the letter, they would often switch and move, or like they would go up. Sometimes it would look like they were moving. And so it was just a series of just having to read over and then not knowing how to say the word, and just various things like that early on. And then whenever you're put in front of a class and it's your turn to read a sentence, and you're thinking, I can't, like I want to.
Right.
I want to participate. I love the whole group learning thing, except now I'm feeling really inadequate, like something's wrong with me. I can't do this. And so, you know, you tend to tell yourself those things, that negative self-talk, and then it happens to be reinforced by your peers and even by teachers that will be reinforced. And so, I mean, I pretty much knew within myself early on, but then it was confirmed through having to read out loud and just a sequence of things. It ended up being confirmed that, yeah, I do have dyslexia.
So when you found out you did the teachers help you, or did the school say, okay, well, here's some tools that can help with that, or what happened?
Not really, because they didn't know what to do. I wasn't like the normal kids. So being in the regular classroom, because I mean, it's not that I couldn't learn, it was just I had to learn differently and at a slower pace, because it took me a while to get it. But then the only other option was to stick me in these classes with kids who had really severe disabilities. And so I was caught in the middle, and they didn't know what to do with me. So I ended up in like these resource classes oftentimes, and basically it just allotted me more time to get through any of my reading, any kind of work that they would give me. They just gave me more time for it.
Okay,
but I never really had like a teacher that said, okay, let's work with this. How can we help you? Let's get a strategy. Let's get a program that works for you. What's the best way for you to learn? Like, how do you learn? I never had anybody sit down with me to try and figure things out.
So do you feel like some people have, like, they learn better with visuals, other people learn better through writing or just hearing something? What's easier for you? Like, how do you learn better? Do you need like pictures and visuals, or can you just hear what somebody's teaching verbally?
Yeah, no, if you just tell me a series of things to do, I will just stare at you. I'm
Yeah.
very, very visual. I'm very tactile. So seeing and doing is the best way for me to learn. But I mean,
Huh.
in school, not in schools, they don't, you have a big classroom, multiple kids. That's really not an option, you know, because most of their teaching style is reading or reciting things
Right.
for the most part.
That's true. What would you, if you ended up being a house manager for someone whose child was going through this, or maybe they had just discovered that they were going through it, how would you encourage that child? Or is there any advice that you would give to them or to the parents?
Yeah, I mean, I would one immediately deal with the emotional state and any kind of negative self-talk or self-perception. That is one of the biggest roadblocks to moving beyond that, because it's not so much that you all of a sudden are healed, like you suddenly don't have dyslexia. You just have to learn to live life with it, and it does get better. It can improve. It's
Mm-hmm.
improved with me, but my biggest hurdle of it wasn't the dyslexia itself. It was the negative self-talk I had, the negative talk that other people would have. She's stupid, she's slow, and then believing it and telling myself that. And then it became like in my brain just a roadblock for me. I would see something and I would instantly say, well, I can't do that. My brain's not capable of handling that. When that's necessarily not true. It
Mm-hmm.
is. It just might take me longer, and I might have to be really creative on how to learn this new thing. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's the trick, is being creative on how to learn. And no one teaches you to teach yourself how to learn creatively,
No
out
kidding.
of the
Yeah.
box. Like, that is such an unknown, scary avenue to have to walk through when you're trying to learn something new. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I want this, but I gotta figure out the best way for my brain to capture this new information and to really know it enough to apply it. So,
Yeah. So you think a lot of it was your own willpower, that you were like, okay, I've noticed, I see that this is an issue, so I'm going to have to work harder. I'm going to have to take more time, and just realizing that nobody's giving me a formula. I'm just going to have to kind of plow through it type of thing.
yeah, there was definitely a lot of that involved, for sure. I mean, there were times where I made my parents take me to the library and I had to get really basic books, just real basic stuff. And if I couldn't pronounce a word, I didn't know how to say it, I would ask an adult what that word was, and then I would just go over it again until I could read the whole sentence. So it was definitely a lot of effort on my part to just take the lead.
Well, I've noted that is a positive quality about you, that I've noticed you do take the lead in things. And you're also very organized. I feel like you're a lot more organized than me. Like, I feel like my brain is all over the place. So even though it's been a struggle, like growing up with it, I think it has made you disciplined, because even with starting the interview and I said, hey, I'm just gonna text you some questions that I might ask you so that you can think about, you like took time with it, you like copied the question and typed out your answer and sent it back to me. So I mean, that wasn't even something I was expecting, but that just shows me like you're disciplined and you take things seriously. And so I think it's probably developed that discipline in you, even though it's not a fun thing to go through. And maybe
Mm,
even give you patience for other people, and
yeah,
patience for when kids are trying to learn something, that you know, okay, there's a block right now. Let me try to figure out how to creatively help them through this.
yeah.
Um, And then you had mentioned your faith. At what point during this process did you start to include God in the process, or did you start talking to him about it? Like, where was your faith in this?
Yeah, it's a big question. So, I mean, being young, one of my first conversations with God concerning this was why? Why, if you are the creator and you made us, why would you make me like this? You know, knowing that you made me to where I do like to learn, but now I have this learning disability, which makes it very difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. And so that was my first real interaction that I remember in terms of going to God with it. Then over the years, I just learned how to lean in to any of my disabilities or any area where I do struggle, and to just accept that that is a detail of me, and I don't know God's purpose for this and how this is all going to work out for my good, because I do believe that. But since I let go of the thoughts I'm stupid and brand myself, I'm dyslexic, I'm this, I'm that, I'm not this, I started saying, I am exactly how God wanted me to be. Mm-hmm. And even though I may not know that reason right now, I'm just going to lean into it, and I'm going to learn what that reason is. And I've found that through this, I have so much heart for people who struggle. If I see someone and I can recognize some kind of struggle with, it doesn't even have to be like an academic type of disability. Like, I just instantly have this attachment to them where it's like I can feel that heaviness, that hurt, the feelings of being inadequate, and just have so much compassion for them. And oftentimes, just if I don't know them, I just want to hug them and be like, everything's fine. Everything's going to work out. This doesn't define you. It's just a part of you. But it's not the sum total of you.
Yeah.
And so, then you just kind of get out of that mindset and you just move beyond it. And when something comes up and here we go, I'm having trouble with this, you just learn to plow through, and you just, thank God for Google.
I know.
Google things, and which really helps. The internet has really been a huge help with it. But yeah, I definitely believe that, God can turn anything into good. And it's just a matter of taking that journey with him. And it often isn't in the way we expect. At least in my experience, it's often been something that might seem mundane at the time. But then when I look back, I often end up thinking, okay, there's the connect, because if I have never have had dyslexia or any of these learning disabilities that I have struggled with it, I would have never been able to really understand this person. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes you get people that will try and comfort you and say, oh, I understand, and they mean well. But unless you really experience something like what they've experienced, it really, on their ears, I know for me, when I hear it, it falls flat. Mm-hmm. And it's like, thank you, mm-hmm. I know your heart in it, but I kind of get the sense you really don't understand.
Right.
Because sometimes there's no words. Sometimes it's just being there, Because, this dyslexia may not seem like a big deal to some people, but it can really cause depression and severe anxiety, not just in school, in the workplace. There's a lot of judgment with it. And it can cause some really severe mental health issues if you don't know how to process it, and if you give it too much weight with who you are, it can be damaging. It's so easy to just automatically take on, I'm a failure, I'm never going to amount to much. I dealt with that. No one's going to want to give me any big responsibilities or whatever the thought may be. And so it just really messes with your perception of yourself. Sometimes parents, friends can do and say things that are very damaging, even when they have good intentions and they don't mean for that. And it's very tricky when you want to support someone. It can be very tricky.
So jumping forward to another area that you've overcame and still, I think in some ways you said are working on overcoming, is not having children. So you said maybe some of the same feelings from, I'm going to say the word wrong, so they should really come up with a different word than dyslexia. Like those same type of feelings when you were going through that in school, did they come up when you first realized that you wouldn't be able to have children the natural way?
Yeah, it was just, oh, here we go again. Just one more thing that's inadequate about me. One more thing that's not working properly. Very much so. There were those feelings. This one went deeper than dyslexia because dyslexia, how can I say this, kind of affected maybe just me, but not being able to have kids affected Brad. It affected not being able to, bring someone into the world and then they grow up and they have their own characteristics and not being a part of that. So it went deeper than just a learning disability. It was probably one of the most painful things that I had to hear about myself with respect to a doctor or professional saying you can't, or if you do, you could die. This isn't possible for you. Your body's not capable. Just those kinds of things was very heartbreaking to hear.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you've gone through that and still working through that. What has been the biggest help for you in that? What is the biggest strength for you in that process?
My faith with God. I think without that, I'm pretty sure I would have delved deep into depression, would have affected my job, and it didn't. And so I'm thankful for my faith. That was it's really hard to describe it, how that helped, how my faith helped me. It's one of those things where I could attempt to describe it, but you can't possibly understand until you experience it, which I wouldn't want anybody to experience this particular part of it. And it's almost like there's a there's a club of women who could honestly understand me when I say it's hard to describe. How you can receive such devastating news about yourself, but then still believe and not doubt God and not get angry.
Right.
But rather run to Him with your hurt and let Him take that and start a healing process. knowing God is capable of working miracles, and I believe that definitely. But also knowing and believing that miracles don't always look the way or come to us the way we expect it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe my miracle is adoption. Maybe my miracle is not having kids for some reason, you know, that I may not understand till later in life. I may never understand. But then coming to a place after because there's a mourning. There's like this period of you literally are just mourning this. It is a lot for you. And once you go through that, you know, the sting is still there, but I came to a place to where I said to God, I know that you're capable of miracles. You know my heart in this. You know I desperately want to be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
But also above being a mom, I want to honor you with my life. I want to please you. I want to be in your will. And right now I don't know what that looks like. But I'm leaning on you to walk me through this. And oftentimes it's not like this aha clear moment. You know, the clouds clear, the sun is shining, a dove comes from heaven. It's nothing like that. It is literally a moment by moment, because I'm human and those feelings will creep up to where I will just want to cry, you know. I'll see something from like my niece or a friend or on TV or whatever that will just be a trigger for me. And then when that trigger happens and I find myself going back to this depressed state, I just start praying and just trusting and just being curious on how God's going to work this out for my good, because that's a promise he has for us and I believe it. And so now it's trusting him and just walking with him and just see where it goes.
And the waiting, I think, is the hard part.
Really hard, yeah.
Yeah. So, same type of thing. What advice would you give to a woman that just realized that she's in the same position? What would you say to encourage her?
I mean, at first I don't think I would say anything because there are no words. In that moment, all words fall short. It's just a matter of being there and maybe just holding her.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes that's all there really is to do, is to just be held. You know, and sometimes that's all I wanted, was to just be held. I don't want anybody to try and understand me. I don't want anybody to spin this in a positive way. You know, just let me feel this, and it be okay for me to be sad. Let it be okay for me to cry. You know, just hold me.
That's really good advice.
And I think people are nervous to go to that because it's a silent thing, but it's a very vulnerable movement.
That's true.
For both people. It's very vulnerable for the person who wants to be held but maybe doesn't want to ask for it or make it known. It's also very vulnerable for the person who may be thinking, well, should I hold them? Like, should I just embrace them? It's a very, you know, because you're coming into their space when they're broken. And so, I mean, you kind of go with just absolute abandonment of any preconceived wisdom, encouragement, or whatever, and just let it be what it is in that moment and to just be okay with it. You know, sometimes that's the best and only way to be there for someone.
Yeah.
Dealing with that.
Yeah. And that's great advice. That is great advice for lots of different areas of brokenness and pain, is just being there with somebody in it. And then what do you think is an area of your life right now that you're working to overcome?
Oh my God, that's a whole list. Oh my God. Let's see, I think trying to overcome the fear of going outside my comfort zone. That's a big one for me. And then I think building bridges with people. And when I say that, I think particularly of my family. There's been a lot of anger and hurt and misunderstanding, and there's a great big divide. And so for me, and it's not just with my family, it's just with people in general, if I were to have a legacy, I would want it to be a person who loved and built a bridge for people. I would want to be known as a bridge builder between people, because I mean we need each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need each other. We need that love, that companionship, encouragement. And sometimes, like I said, to just sit next to each other, you know, without saying anything and being okay with it. So yeah, those are probably two big things.
So the first step to building the bridge to reconciliation is maybe just like the presence, like being next to each other, like showing up for each other. Mm-hmm. Even though you don't have the solution figured out, at least you're there, type of thing.
Yeah, and for me, it's really been a journey that God has really led me on, and a lot of it has to do with my own perception of others and assuming that I understood a person or their beliefs or their way of thinking or any particular situation, but then realizing that not only do I not really have a full grasp on that, but that, you know, people hurt and people respond to other people based on their own experiences. And so when I started looking at people and asking God to help me see them the way He does, it was through a lens of grace and mercy, and say, well, I don't understand why they're being this way. But then just wanting to extend love to them without expecting anything in return. And that being the bridge.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And then was that your strategy right now to overcome the areas that you're working on, is just from a place of grace and forgiveness type of thing?
Yeah.
So you mentioned getting out of your comfort zone. What do you think your comfort zone is? Like, how would you describe what your comfort zone is?
I've always struggled with rejection and a sense of going back to the whole dyslexia thing in my childhood, feeling inadequate. So I never really stepped out to really, I don't know, to just really embrace community and embrace opportunities and truly embrace growth in various areas of a person's life, because I've always been so afraid. What if I mess up? I've always been so afraid of failure. I've been afraid of criticism, even if it was constructive. They always say don't take it personal, but it is. Never understood that phrase. It's absolutely personal.
You're right.
And so for me, getting outside of my comfort zone is learning how to lean into it and not being so devastated when things don't go my way or when I don't have a positive result or a positive feedback, but knowing that I can withstand that and I can grow from it, and it's not the end of the world, and it doesn't mean people hate me, or because those have always been kind of how I viewed it, and so I've always been afraid to really step out. And it can be in church, ministry, it can be in career, relationships, whatever. I've just been afraid to step out. And so I think since I do have a desire to love others and to be a bridge builder, that requires a stepping out. So it kind of goes together, where I do feel like God is bringing me to a place of wanting me to be willing to take a risk. Because I typically don't take risks, and I need to just trust God in it.
I'm not to like, I totally get what you're saying, and it's such good advice, but I'm just remembering our friendship. Like, do you remember that time? And I'm thinking you did step out here because this is out of your comfort zone, and I don't even know why you did it, but you did it. We were at church, and they were practicing for the men's choir. Do you remember that? We were in the main sanctuary, like maybe we were like wrapping up service, and then they brought the men together on another side of the church to start practicing for the men's choir. And I said, I'll give you $1 if you walk over. I don't know. That's pretty rude. Only $1. I'll give you $1 if you walk over there and pretend to be in the men's choir. And do you remember? And then you did it. You walked over there. And you stood like you planted yourself in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And you did it. And I mean, that's a ridiculous request, but
I can see me doing that. I've always been more willing to, I guess, step out and do something silly.
Yeah, okay.
I think if it's silly or for a laugh or something that I would deem not serious, it's easier for me. I can see me. I've done quite a few silly things like that before, so that's fitting that you would have that memory of me.
And I appreciate it, and maybe I saw it in you, so it's like, let's see where we can take this.
How far will this go?
Yeah, but there's freedom in that, right? Just being silly and like not taking the situation seriously.
Yeah.
Is it possible to do that as you step out of your comfort zone, or does it need to be taken seriously? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it depends on the situation. I mean, I can see myself taking some things too seriously and putting more weight on it than what it deserves and not being willing to move forward in it. For sure, I mean, I tend to do that. And so, I mean, it would make sense for me to kind of step back and get a proper assessment on something that might be making me feel very anxious or like I can't do it. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily like if somebody challenges you to do something, do you have more strength to meet that challenge? Or, wait, what am I trying to say? If it's something that you're trying to overcome and you're noticing that's coming against you, it's harder to do than if somebody gives you a challenge to do something.
Yeah. Unless that challenge happens to correspond with something I may be dealing with and having trouble with. And
right. That makes sense.
Then I may want to think twice about taking on that challenge. But if it doesn't and it's just a challenge, I mean, again, depending on what the challenge is, I've been known to take them.
I know, and that's what I love about you. You're ready for it. So what is your main strategy then for getting out of your comfort zone?
I think just leaning into it.
Okay.
And just leaning into the circumstance, leaning into whatever the response or results are, leaning into God and just kind of, he's a good counselor, he's a good listener, just telling him how I'm feeling about it. And it's almost as if sometimes I can feel him hold my hand and say, it's okay, let's go,
Yeah.
And it feels like he's right there with me, and it does bring comfort for me. But just leaning into it and just embracing the whole experience and the growth. Even if there's failure, because failure can be recycled, is what I'm learning. And just, if I fall, just get back up and learn and just keep moving forward. as opposed to what I tend to do and just stay and not move. Look around and say, oh, that would be nice, this would be nice, oh, I want to go over there, but then not taking the steps to do it.
Right.
Too afraid to do it for whatever reason, but knowing that it's okay and it's required, to grow.
So failure can be recycled. So like if you failed at something, it can change into something else and work out. Is that what that means? Or what's an example of that?
Yeah, I mean, when I think of that, I just think in terms of, like when we mess up, it doesn't all have to be bad. You can learn from it. You can learn and you can take notes and you can say, okay, this is what I did. This was the result. This is what worked and this is what didn't work. And this is what needs to be adjusted.
Okay.
And just go, you always hear these wealthy people that have these like major companies and how many times they failed and how many times they were bankrupt and how many times this and it was like all this negative stuff to where I'm thinking, oh my God, what, 10 times this person failed at this one particular thing 10 times, but then they got up and did it again and now it's like this huge success.
Yeah.
And you hear stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
And it's always inspiring when you hear it from them. But then when it's your turn,
yeah,
at least for me, it's like, oh yeah, that's easier said than done. It's like, it didn't feel too good the first time around.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to do it again. So, but it's just embracing it and learning.
Yeah. Well, I know you're an overcomer. I've heard lots of things that you've already overcame, and I do know you're strong, and I do know that your faith in God keeps you steady in the whole process. So thank you for sharing those areas and encouraging other people. I know you're not the only one going through these specific areas, and I know that you're not the only one going through the feelings that are attached to these things. So
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your wisdom and in your encouraging words, and I hope to have you back on. We can discuss some more subjects.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes. Alrighty. Bye, girl.
Bye.